Good day, Kavibal, and welcome to our Learn at Home Facebook Live. For the discussion today, the topic will be on a minimalist teacher in the time of pandemic. Before we begin, take note of the following reminders. Make sure you are registered to the webinar to have your e-certificate of participation. Visit certificate.vibalgroup.com to generate your proof of attendance. Place your questions on the comment box allotted during the session and they will be addressed by our speaker later on. Share the video using hashtag LearnAs1PH as our official hashtag to our Vibal webinars. Experience learning, Kavibal. And now, to proceed with our webinar this evening, It is my pleasure to introduce to you our distinguished speaker today. Miss Allana Autor is a graduate of Bachelor in Secondary Education, majored in English from the Polytechnic University of the Philippines, Manila. She is currently working in Don Bosco School, Manila as the subject area coordinator for the English department. Presently, she is pursuing her degree in Master of Arts in Literary and Cultural Studies at the Ateneo de Manila University. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Miss Allana Autor.
Hi, everybody. Good evening, and welcome to my discussion for tonight, sponsored by Vibal for their Learn at Home session. My topic for tonight is a minimalist teacher in the time of pandemic. So, again, I am Allana Autor from Don Bosco School, Manila. And before I start my talk with you, I would like to introduce myself a little bit more. What kind of a teacher am I? As a teacher, I am very talkative and I like sharing a lot of stories with my students. Most of the times, I would tell my students that whenever I get off track with my stories, they have to pull me back and they have to remind me about it. Because I feel like, well, people would say that experience is the best teacher. And so I always share my experiences, people's experiences, my friends' experiences in the way that I teach. But for me, I think experience is the best example. So whatever I will be discussing with you tonight is based on my experience about what minimalism is like, how it has helped me in how it has changed the way that I live and the way that I teach, and everything that I learned from um, I think it's almost a year now that I've been practicing this, from the articles, from the videos that I've seen, and again, most especially based on my experience. Now, why do I do that? Because my experience is, I know my experience is better. I know myself better, and I think it will be more relatable for, especially for teachers like me. I know that there are also other audiences here who are parents, friends as well, my friends who are watching me right now. I hope that you learn something from what I will be discussing. So, to tell you, I actually started my minimalism journey around, I think, November last year. And how did it start? I realized just one day as I was looking at my room, I share my room with my sister. As I was looking at our room, I could see a lot of things hanging on the wall. As you can see here, so many things hanging on my door. My clothes lying on the floor. So many things. Look at my bed that's not made up and all that. So it's a very cluttered, very messy room. And it doesn't really help. I mean, because of that, I don't really like, or I didn't really like working at home. Whenever I have to finish something and I couldn't finish it in school, I would opt to going to a coffee shop just to be able to have that kind of feeling of relaxation, of peace, because I couldn't get that in my room. And so I realized I really had to do something about my room. I had to declutter first. So I had to ask my mom and my sister to help me declutter. We started boxing up things, putting the trash inside bins and all that. It took not just one day, I think it took around 2 or 3 days if I'm not mistaken. And after decluttering, that's when I also started with slowly um, doing a makeover of my room. Eventually, as I was realizing what I was doing, it something popped up in my head, and I realized it's actually minimalism, right? And I've been hearing minimalism from my friends a lot of times before. Whenever we would have coffee, they would tell me about it, and I grew curious about it. We would chat about it. And so I realized what I'm doing back then, cleaning up my room, is an example of what minimalism is like. So after, I think it was around 2 or 3 months, no, maybe 2 months, this is how my room looked. So I had to clean up so many things. I asked my father to create this table of mine, which is, I know I told you earlier that I like going to coffee shops, and one thing that I like most about it is the high table and the high chair. I feel like I can really work better whenever I'm sitting on that spot compared to the other spots in the coffee shop. And so I asked my father to make me one because I really wanted to have that same feeling so that I know I can focus on my job. And I also asked my father to make this bed and cleaned up so many things. And I guess the saying that we could have for this experience is I got bitten by a bug. So I got bitten by the minimalism bug. Ever since then, I will be very conscious with whatever decisions I have to make, whatever things I have to purchase. Does it fit in my room? Do I have enough space for that? Or do I have something like that already? Is it something I really have to purchase or not? Because again, I'm trying to practice minimalism. So from cleaning up my room, from decluttering my room, I had to I actually brought it to school as well. First thing I had to do was declutter my table. And if you can see here, this is the only picture I have of my cluttered table. So this is how it looks in my school. As you can see, the tables there from other teachers, they're actually clean compared to mine. So this is how it looked. First thing I had to do was to clean up the drawers. And I realized I had like 10 notebooks with only a few pages used. I also had like 100, I'm not exaggerating, I really had like 100 pens. And it causes me trouble whenever I have to check papers, because every time I try to get a pen, it doesn't work. I'll try to get another one, it doesn't work. And because it's all dried up, they've been there for so many years already, and just didn't or couldn't find the time to clean up. And so I did already. I cleaned them up. I had to throw away a lot of pens that were not working anymore. I had to give some papers I had to throw away already. Some I had to keep. And I realized, can I also use minimalism not just by the way that I clean up my stuff at home and my stuff in school, but in the way that I teach as well? Is it also possible? And the answer to that is yes. That's why I'm giving you this talk. So how can I apply minimalism in the way that I teach? That will be the focus of my talk, and I'll go to that later. But disclaimer first. According to Joshua Becker, an author of the books The More of Less and The Minimalist Home, when people are forced into minimalism, it is less likely to have a long lasting effect. Being forced into minimalism causes many people to adopt rather a disaster focused mentality. And again, talking about my experience, right after or while I was decluttering my room, I also told my mom that maybe we should also clean up the house, because aside from my room, the rest of our house is messy. So many stuff. We have a lot of Durabox filled with, I don't even know what they are anymore, because we've not been um, using them or opening them for quite some time now. And I would tell my mom, maybe we should throw away this Durabox. You haven't opened it for a few years now. Maybe we don't need it anymore. Or maybe we don't have to spend a lot of time digging through it and checking everything that's there and checking whether something is important. Because again, for a few years, you haven't opened it. So maybe that should tell us that it doesn't matter anymore and we should get rid of it. And it wasn't an easy process. My mom couldn't agree. She said that there are still some things that she had to look for in there. Maybe there are important documents there and all that. And so I couldn't really force her. It wasn't something that I can force my mother to do, because my mom is a kind of person that needs to prepare herself before she cleans. But when she does clean, she really cleans. You know what I mean? But I couldn't force her into doing minimalism. I couldn't force my family to do what I was doing back then. And this is the same thing that I will not be able to force you to do. After this talk, I would not be able to tell you that you also have to practice minimalism, because it's not just good for you, it's good for the environment, it's good for everybody in the society. It's not something that I can tell you. Because again, according to Joshua Becker, if I do, or if people will force you to practice minimalism, the effect might not last long. This should be a conscious decision. This should be your own decision whether you will do it or not. It has to be something that will come from you, not something that people will force you into doing. So again, in the whole in the whole discussion that I'll be giving tonight, I will not force you to transition into a minimalist lifestyle, but instead, I will just present to you what minimalism is and how valuable it is and how it can help you to live better. And of course, most especially for teachers, to teach better. So, what is minimalism? Let me now define to you what minimalism is. I know maybe you have heard of this as well for. from your friends or you found it online. But what is minimalism? Minimalism involves the deliberate and frequent rejection of all that is unnecessary. The function word here you have to remember is unnecessary. So, meaning when you're going to practice minimalism, you have to be aware that you have to reject things that are not necessary, things that really don't function for you, things that don't really matter for you. If you have a red pen, a blue pen, and a black pen, do you also need to buy a green pen? Do you also have to buy a purple pen? Is it something that's really necessary? I mean, that's what you have to think about when you're practicing minimalism. I already have 5 pairs of shoes, and I use one for jogging, I use one for going to the mall, I use one for whatever. Do I really need to buy another one? It's a conscious decision of rejecting things that you don't really need anymore. But don't get me wrong, minimalism is not about not buying anything at all. It doesn't mean that when you're a minimalist you have to keep your money, not spend anything, spend only on food. It doesn't mean like that, okay? Don't get me wrong. This is driven, or minimalism is driven by a modern culture that is obsessive about the collecting and hoarding of stuff. um I have seen a lot of videos on YouTube about people hoarding stuff, and it's not something that I think they have a control with. It's it's a condition that is serious, that should be addressed, and it's something that we cannot really just joke around and tell people, you know what, you're a hoarder. But I'm guilty of that. I've told my mom that she is a hoarder because she keeps a lot of things. And because of that, because of people keeping such stuff, minimalism is something that you can use to address that. But again, you cannot force people to do that. But because of hoarding, people have this attachment to things. And that's what we're trying to do away with minimalism, not being attached too much to things. Because again, maybe they don't last, they're not really permanent in our lives. And we have them because they're useful. But to be bothered by not having something, being affected by not having the newest or the latest iPhone, I think is not good as well. Being bothered by not having enough number of shoes is also not good. You have, again, keyword is unnecessary. If it's unnecessary, then it doesn't have a room for your life or in your life. Minimalism simply allows you to make decisions more consciously and more deliberately. So now, before you buy something, if you're going to try to practice minimalism, before you buy something, you think about it first. I saw this post on Facebook about uh, buying something online. If you really want to buy it, sit on it for 7 days. Wait, sleep on it. If after 7 days you feel like it's still something that you have to buy because you really need it, then go ahead and do it. Um, at the time that I was starting practicing minimalism, I also had that kind of moment. I wanted to buy something, and before I bought it, I had to wait like a week or two because it's not something cheap. But I was thinking, is it something that I really need? It's We have a pandemic right now. Is it something that's necessary? Can I live without it? And eventually, after thinking about it for like 2 weeks, I opted to buying it. And I think until now, it's something that I do not regret buying because it's something that's necessary in my life. I use it, well, not every day, but I use it most of the times. And it's very convenient for me. So again, minimalism teaches you how to decide more consciously and more deliberately. Before you spend your money, think about it first. Again, ask yourself questions. Do I need it? Will my life be better if I buy this thing, or if I subscribe to this thing? Making room for what matters. Again, I've told you this earlier, that minimalism is not about not buying anything, or it's not just about living with less things or less material stuff. This is where you um, try to reject other things that are not necessary, or to declutter your life with things that are not necessary anymore, so that you can make room for what really matters. Let's say your time, because you feel like you don't really need to spend 1 hour doing your makeup, you have to cut it to like 10 minutes, and it actually looks the same. People still look at you and say that you're so beautiful, right? And the spare time that you have, the 50 minutes that you have, that you took from an hour of putting makeup on, where can you use that to something that really matters? Maybe you can bond with your family, maybe you can start reading a book, Or maybe you can do something that you really wanted to do, start a podcast or make a vlog. It's up to you. So you make room for what matters. You remove so many stuff in your room or in your house because you want to make room for what really matters. Maybe you really need a new bed, or maybe you really need a new computer. So you have to clear some stuff from your table so that there's space, right? And according to Joshua Fields Milburn and Ryan Nicodemus, these two people are very popular with minimalism. They have a lot of books, and they also have a website called The Minimalist. They said that minimalism is a tool to rid yourself of life's excess in favor of focusing on what's important. So you can find happiness, fulfillment, and freedom. So look at the three words at the end. They said that you can find, because of minimalism and because of removing life's excess, you can find happiness, fulfillment, and freedom because you don't feel the burden of saving a lot of money just so you can buy the latest iPhone. You're more happy. You have more freedom to really spend money on what really matters because you are not bothered by a lot of things in your life because you had to remove a lot of things from your life. You have more happiness. You're more fulfilled with your work. And I think minimalism really, I think this statement really summarizes the effect of minimalism in our lives. So where would you usually see, or where do people usually apply minimalism? Commonly, minimalism is found in the way they dress. This is what a minimalist closet would look like, with only a few pairs of shoes, clothes, some pants, and all that. And people, extreme minimalists, I guess we can call them extreme minimalists, would only have 5 pairs of pants or 3 pairs of shoes, all of them black and white. And I'm not saying that that's wrong because it works for them. They feel like they don't need a lot of stuff because they have enough. They don't need to buy a new pair of pants because they still have pants that are functional and they can still use them. Shoes are still I mean, they are looking they still look okay. So they don't need to buy anything anymore. And I also try to practice this not by really having only 5 pairs of pants or just a number of clothes, but trying to minimize or decrease the number of clothes that I have. I had to donate them to my or give them to my cousins or to my sister. And I also try to practice buying clothes, color of clothes, which are um, like white or blue or black, colors that are easy to match. Because a few years ago, you would find me buying neon pink jacket, neon pink shoes, neon green. I don't know, I would choose them. And eventually I would realize that I couldn't really use them aside from that one time that I wanted to use it. So it's not practical. And now I would usually just buy stuff that I can match with anything. So it's easier for me to go out and think of what I should wear. Another way people apply minimalism is how they decorate their rooms. So as you can see, this one is a very good example of a minimalist house. It's something that I feel like I would love to live in because it's very simple. There's really not a lot of things taking up a lot of space. It gives you an impression that the house is open, quiet, and peaceful. And I think everybody would love to live in a peaceful kind of house. So this is an example of a minimalist house. Some people would even apply minimalism in the way that they eat. They choose things that are healthy. They don't really look for aesthetics. Some people would choose just having whatever is necessary to make them feel well and not go to any expensive restaurants and take a picture of their food and post it on Instagram. Some people would just prefer having, things that are necessary for them. Even in gadgets, people apply minimalism in their gadgets. Some would spend a lot of money on buying laptops that are of high specs because they feel like it's a good decision because it will last for a longer time or you wouldn't have to replace it after a few years. It's something that is, again, minimal. Now, how do we transition to a minimalist lifestyle. Okay, now that we know, I have already told you my minimalist journey, how I started with it, and that until now, I'm still trying to practice it. Not perfectly though, still making mistakes, still sometimes when I go to the mall, I still buy stuff that I don't really need. But again, practicing, still practicing. How do we now transition to a minimalist lifestyle? First, you have to start small. Start with yourself. Talk to yourself first. Is it really something that I want to do? Can I really let go of things that I feel like are something that I need? Can I really just live with one lip tint, or do I need five of them? Do I need 10 shades of my lip tint, or can I live with one? Well, for me, I only have one and I can live with that. Do I need to have a lot of shoes? Do I need to have a lot of bags? You have to talk to yourself first. Declutter your space. Start small by decluttering your own space. Maybe start with your table. Right now, my table needs to be decluttered. You can look at your bed. Do you need to declutter your room, your bed, your comfort room, your kitchen? Start with that. One room at a time. Let go of the things that you feel are unnecessary. If you feel like this book doesn't really make me happy anymore, like Con Mary, or this book, I've read this book 1,000 times, so I really need to keep it still in my shelves, or can I give it away to someone who can enjoy it as well? So you have to decide in yourself whether you let go of the things that you feel are not good for you anymore, or that you don't need anymore. Okay, and then find places where you can donate, barter, or sell your stuff. If you go on Facebook, you would be able to find a lot of pages or Facebook pages where people barter. I had a friend, a Facebook friend I saw like a week ago. She had to barter the toys of her daughter with food, and she was successful. People wanted the toys that her daughter had. They may be old, but they're still toys. And they exchange it with food, maybe chips or noodles or whatever the person wanted as an exchange. And you can also find organizations where you can donate your stuff. I joined this minimalist group on Facebook, and some people would send messages asking if people know where they can donate their clothes, where they can donate their old sofa, and anything that they can donate. So you can find places where you can donate them. Or if they don't really work anymore, it cannot be donated, you can put them in the trash. That's not a sin. You can do that. And this one, the most difficult, I think, now, especially because we are in the pandemic, and it's very difficult and it's not safe. It's dangerous to go outside and go to the mall. It takes guts to go out and go to the mall. And a lot of people just um, rely on online shopping websites such as Lazada and Shopee. So if you would like to practice minimalism, this is something that you have to know that you might sacrifice. I'm not saying that you will or that you have to, but you might sacrifice. Maybe not sacrifice in entirety, or maybe just make your purchases minimal. Maybe again, before you add to cart or before you purchase it, think about it first. Is it something that you need, something that's necessary? But expect that you will be affected, or this part of your life will be affected if you start minimalism. Okay, next is to declutter your mind. Minimalism is not just about your stuff. It's not just about removing excess stuff that you have, but about decluttering your mind as well. Earlier, I attended a webinar for our mental health, and it's a good way to declutter your mind because you're giving your time. You're giving yourself time to breathe and just relax and to think about the things that are making you stress or making you problematic. So you think about all of those. Think about what you can do with them one by one if it could be addressed. So declutter your mind. And now that we are in a pandemic, we have to list down things that are important. I know that not every, maybe you're not aware of it, but maybe you're already trying or you're already practicing minimalism by just being in this kind of situation, which is the pandemic. How can I say that? Excuse me. Maybe you have already sacrificed going to the mall, buying some stuff. Maybe instead of spending this a certain amount of money whenever you go on um a grocery shopping, or when you have to buy something, instead of spending a certain amount of money, you lessen it to half, 50%. That's one form of minimalism as well. So you list down things that you need and you don't need as of the moment, especially because there's a pandemic. Do I need to worry about such stuff? Do I need to think about this right now? It's more important that I think about my mental health. It's more important that I think about what my family will eat. Do I really need to think about the newest um, pair of shoes? Do I really need to buy this new shirt? This company is selling or promoting. Is that necessary? Or do I need to buy face mask, or do I need to buy face shield? Is that where I should put my money instead of buying things that are not really for me or for this kind of situation? Now, we move on to minimalism in education. We have discussed what minimalism is and where people usually apply it, and how we can transition from, or how we can transition to a minimalist lifestyle. Now, let's see how we can apply what we have learned from the discussion of minimalism to education, specifically education. As I have told you earlier, after decluttering my room, decluttering my table in school, I realized that I could also use minimalism in the way that I teach. And how? How am I able to apply it to the way that I teach? Number one, competencies. Okay, now what do you mean by that? Uh, the competencies that we have to teach for teachers, so we have to teach to our students is, well, in our case for English, there are a lot. There's actually a ton of competencies that we have to discuss. And as a coordinator for my department, it's always a struggle to help my fellow teachers identify which of the competencies given by DepEd should I include, or should they include in their discussions. Because if you have seen the curriculum guide before, let me show you. Let me just show you an example. This is an example of the curriculum guide for grade 9 English for 1 quarter only. So as you can see here, these are the competencies that you have to hit. You have to teach your students. So all of them are written there. As you can see, I had to put 4 pages of competencies. Imagine having only 2 or 3 months, 2 or 3 months of discussing English with your students. Maybe you have a class with them every day, and you have to hit all of these in 1 quarter. It's almost an impossible task. Almost an impossible task. And again, it's a challenge for us to really identify which one should I teach, because there's so many things you have to consider. You're not only going to consider your time or the time that you have, but you also have to consider um, if the students already learned about this, or if the teacher from the previous level already discussed this particular competency. If not, do I have to go back to the competency from the previous level before I move on to this one? Again, so many things that you have to consider. So it was actually, I think we could call this a blessing in disguise when DepEd gave out the MELCs, or the most essential learning competencies, because compared to what I showed you earlier, which is this for the competencies for grade 9, this is what we have right now for grade 9. As you can see, for grade 9, first quarter, there are only 3 competencies. For second quarter, there are only 2 competencies. For quarter 3, there are only 3. And for the fourth quarter, there are only 4 competencies. So it's really a big cut, right? From having how many, like, I don't know, like 50 or 60 competencies to just this. It's, I guess it's, teachers can finally, well, in my case, I could really feel relieved. I was able to breathe and say, okay, I think this time I'll be able to teach without much stress, not thinking about the pandemic, because I have finally a guide of what I need to teach my students, what's the most essential or the most important. And here, again, you can find minimalism already. DepEd is practicing minimalism by doing this. So they were able to narrow it down they were able to just identify which of these out of the 60 competencies, I'm not sure about the number, okay? I'm not good in math. Um, Out of all of these, a bulk of the competencies, this is what we came up with. This is how many competencies you have to teach your students. So it's easier, not just for the teachers, but for the students as well, and even for the parents guiding them at home, because it's clear that these are the things that they have to study. However, in our case, in my school, we were given the freedom to look at the competencies, at the most essential learning competencies, and then add if we feel like there's something that we have to. Again, is that an example of minimalism? Yes, because again, it has to be things that are necessary. We feel like, okay, this is the most essential competencies, but I feel like I still have to insert something because that's necessary as well. They could not discuss this without having to know this. Or maybe because during my time discussing this, or during my time last year, I was able to identify that this topic is very important for students. So I could add that. And that's still minimalism because that's necessary. That's important for my students to know. So that's for the competencies. Next, what about for assessments? What do we do with assessments? How can we, as teachers, apply minimalism in the way we assess the learning of our students? Coming from competencies, choosing which topics are very important for my students, which topics are necessary now that we're facing a pandemic. Do I still have to discuss such things, or do I not discuss them anymore? How do I assess them now? What should be my considerations in doing an assessment? A few years back, the kind of assessment we would do in my school is what we call K-pop. We call it K-pop, right? It's knowledge, process, understanding, and product. So every quarter, whenever we would have our quarterly exam, our exams would be very low. Why? Because you would have, let's say, you would have 15% of knowledge test type, maybe multiple choice or matching or fill in the blanks. Then you would have, for English, I'm talking about for English, okay? And for process, maybe you would spend around 30 items or 35 items for your students to maybe construct sentences. Usually that's what I think about. If it's process, they have to construct sentences. So that's what they would do. And then for the understanding part, the common practice before that we had was we had to look for multiple articles. The minimum is, if I remember correctly, multiple minimum of 3 articles. They may be long or they may be short. We have to put them there, and then ask the students to read and maybe answer like 20 items of essay where they will get the answers from the articles that they have created. Now, the articles need to be connected, and they have to, I think, if I'm not mistaken, they have to be answering um, enduring. No, no, they have to give out the enduring understanding, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's how I remember it. So that's how we used to do the exam. And for a few years, I was okay with it because I feel like, okay, actually, this is a good kind of assessing your students because they're really spending a lot of time understanding. But one day, sorry for telling stories again, someone cannot no one can really pull me back whenever I get off track now because this is online. But one day, as I was proctoring an exam, there was this one particular student who told me, I mean, it was the exam would last for an hour or 2 hours. I don't remember anymore, maybe an hour or two. And the student was already done after like 30 minutes. And I was astounded, like, how was he able to finish my exam for 30 minutes only? How was he able to do that? So I talked with him and I asked him, "Are you done already?" He said, "Yes, teacher, I'm done." How were you able to answer the essay part? Because usually I would require a certain number of sentences, maybe 5 sentences to answer an essay question, or maybe if I'm feeling like I have to really torture, not really, but maybe 10 sentences. And I would ask them that. So I was really curious how he was able to finish it in just 30 minutes. And you know what he answered, or what he said to me? "Teacher, I did not read the articles anymore. I can just answer it based on my knowledge." That's how he answered me. And I realized that maybe a lot of students are doing this as well. Maybe they feel like they don't need to do that anymore. Maybe it's not necessary for them to read the articles anymore because they could answer the questions easily. So that defeats the purpose of having or spending a lot of time looking for these articles, searching for them, reading them as a teacher, thinking about questions that would be good for your students, and eventually they won't read it at all. They won't. And it's a very good thing that that we transitioned from having that kind of an exam to what we have right now, which is, I think, more direct, and it addresses the competencies of what really is the thing that the students have to learn, and what we really have to assess based on what we have taught them, because we focus on not the topic, but we focus on the competency that we discussed all throughout the quarter. So we had to do away with this kind of assessment. So you have to remember that when you're giving formative and summative assessment in applying minimalism, do I really need to ask my students to answer 20 items for a formative test? Do I have to really make my summative test 50 items or 30 items just to make sure that they really learned something from what I discussed? Is it really about how long or how many items you're giving them? Or could it be just 5 items and then you're really, okay, they got it already? I think it depends on how you do or how you construct your assessment. It's the way you question them. It's the way you come up with the items that doesn't really just look at, or doesn't really just measure, um, what do you call that? Doesn't really just measure bare minimum. You get what I mean? And that takes skill, that takes experience, and you need someone to guide you in doing that. And I'm very thankful that our principal, Sister Pinky, is really able to teach us how to do this. She spent some time with us to really help us improve the way we construct our papers, and by inviting people as well to help us do this. And another thing where you can apply minimalism is by identifying or choosing the correct test type that you need for your assessment or for your students to answer. If you're teaching your students how to construct sentences using different types of adverbs, do you really need to ask them to match items? Do you need them to answer essay questions? Do you need them to answer true or false items? Or are you just coming up with those items so that you can reach the required number of assessment that you have to come up with? So it's something that you have to really think about. If it's about constructing sentences, maybe I should just ask them to construct sentences, right? Maybe I should just ask them to answer a certain question. Or maybe I should just give them a topic, let them come up with their own paragraphs or their own sentences. And that way, I could assess whether they were able to understand how I taught them constructing sentences, and not really about filling in the blanks. What's the correct modal for this? Or modal, sorry, adverb for this, or maybe matching the different types of adverbs. I'm not saying that you don't need that anymore, okay? We differ with the needs of our students. Maybe some of our students still have to recall the different types of adverbs. Maybe some don't. Again, it depends on whatever is necessary, whatever is important for the kind of students that you have right now. What about feedbacking? How do you give your feedbacks to your students? Do you ask them to stay after class, talk to them one by one? Do you give them whenever you give back essays, do you have to write a lot of things or to annotate, or to write on the margins, or to actually redo the whole thing? Or do you just give them a rubric where you just put a check mark, write down the score, they could find where they went wrong and all that? And again, you can apply minimalism in the way that you feedback with your students, because you don't have to really come up with such long comments. According to Jamie Thom, less is more when it comes to written feedback. Rather than repetitive comments, minimalist marking involves reflecting on impact and action. Only what will move learning forward. Only what will move learning forward. Do you really have to spend a lot of time correcting things that are not important anymore? Is it something that your students really have to remember? How Is it really something that, for example, how they should spell your name? Some teachers are very icky with that. If students misspell their name, they have to correct that. Is it really something that's important right now? Or could you just focus on how to correct their format? Or maybe how to correct their grammar? Or maybe the content itself? Whichever you feel like is the most important, you address that. And it also becomes, I think if you're going to use like rubrics, it lessens the effort that you have to exert, because you don't have to repetitively write, move this towards this place, or edit this part, or consistency of your consistency of your verb. They have to repeatedly say that, or can you just come up with a rubric where everything is mentioned already, and then when you give it back to your students, just put a check mark, and they would already be able to identify, okay, I went wrong in this part. I went wrong with grammar. I only got 3 out of 5 because I committed a lot of grammar mistakes. I only got 2 out of 5 for the format because I did not follow it. Maybe I should go back to the discussion, to the lesson given by the teacher, and again look back at the format that she discussed with us. So by doing that, you lessen the effort that you have to exert, and you also make it easier for your students to understand, because I don't, maybe even your the way that you write your comments, sometimes the students won't understand. I had a teacher in college. She's a very good one. Whenever we would submit homework and she needs to tell us something, she wouldn't write on our paper. She wouldn't really correct a lot of things on our paper. She would just write, "Let's talk." And then when she returns it, so whenever I would get that comment, "Let's talk," I'd be so nervous. I'd be thinking of, oh my gosh, what did I do wrong? Am I going to be scolded by my teacher? Because what she does is she calls you in front. She'll call us one by one, whoever gets the "let's talk" comment. And then when we go there, she'd tell us whatever we went wrong. Maybe that kind of, or that way of giving feedback will work for you. Depends on, again, what is necessary and what your students need. Next is the way that we teach, or our teaching method. I'll discuss a lot of things about this. According again to Jamie Thom, it seeks to refine, or minimalism seeks to refine the content of lessons to cut out waffle, gimmicks, and activities that are not directly correlated to its focus. Time should instead be invested in planning for efficient direct instruction, challenging questions, and deliberate practice for students. Back when I was doing my OJT in college, my idea was, whenever there would be a motivation part, your goal is to make sure that your students are energized before you start the lesson, without really thinking about, is it really related. I met a lot of teachers who would use, back in college, right? I met a lot of teachers who would use rebus. I think it's called rebus puzzle. I'm not sure if it's pronounced correct. I pronounced it correctly, but it's rebus. Before they start their lesson, they would show us this kind of puzzle, and we have to identify what that puzzle is trying to tell us. A lot of teachers would do that, and come to think of it, right now, I realize that maybe they use that because they wanted us to enjoy our time before we go on to whatever complex lesson they have to discuss. But again, going back to minimalism, is it something that you really have to do? Is your goal to make your class energize by doing such stuff? Or can I find another way to get their attention, to energize them, to prepare them for the coming lesson that is also related to what I will be teaching them? And that's what we do in the way that we teach right now in my school. So whenever we have to engage them, it's something that should be related to my lesson for that day. At the same time, something that they would enjoy, something that's necessary. So you have to cut out waffle, gimmicks, and activities, things that you don't need anymore. You don't have to make them answer, or you don't have to play games with them before you start your classes. Think about activities that really make sure that you are able to instruct them well. You give them challenging questions and deliberate practice for them. They get to practice what really is the topic that you're discussing with them, and not just play around, and not just enjoy the class, but enjoy and learn from whatever you are teaching them. So here are some questions you can ask yourself. This I took this from the article The Insider's Guide to Becoming a Minimalist Teacher by Dr. Tiffany Carr, and she came up with these 5 questions. Number 1 is, does this project serve a purpose or is it just a filler? Is there really a purpose of why I'm doing this activity, or is it just there because I still have 10 minutes of my time? Will this task make a positive impact on my students' learning? When I ask them to do the rebus puzzle, is it really impactful for them? Positive impact? Is it necessary? Again, necessary. Function word for today, or the most important word for today, aside from minimalism. Necessary. What would student learning look like without this assignment? Can I just do away with it? It's fine. I don't have to ask them to spend 1 hour researching online when really they won't learn anything from doing that. How can I transform this project to be more focused on student goals? So whenever, just a tip, okay, um, or a suggestion, whenever you're trying to come up with, or whenever you're trying to construct your lesson or your modules for the coming quarters, ask yourself these 5 questions. Maybe they would help. Maybe you would be able to plan better and be more direct and really come up with activities that are connected to the competency that you have to address, that you have to hit. All these 5 questions. What about in classroom instructions or rules? The way you do your instructions or the way you give them rules in class. Some teachers would ask their students, especially the little ones, some teachers would ask them to memorize rules. I don't think I ever did that in my class. I don't have to tell them to memorize number 1, respect is blah blah blah. Number 2, listen to blah blah blah. Number 3, listen. I don't think I ever had to ask my students to do that. I think what I've done is at the start of the class really show them what they have to expect in class, what you tolerate and what you don't. You tell them, well, in my case, the only rule that I have in my class is because I'm teaching English, I always ask my students to speak English during my class. And I know some people would say, that's not something we practice anymore, right? I mean, okay, I get that. It's just my own opinion. I feel like it's the only time my students get to practice speaking in English. So I tell them, speaking in English during my time. That's the only rule that I have. And I feel like connected with that, or in line with asking them to speak English in my class, they also learn about respect, about how they should respect what I tell them, how they should follow not just the rule of speaking in English, but other rules as well. I mean, just coming up with one rule could probably teach your students many other values. It depends on how you come up or how you do this kind of rule or instruction. No need to make them, I think for me, no need to really make them memorize 5 or 10 rules that they have to repeat every day. Number 1, do this, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think it has to do with the way you come up or the way you construct the rules that you will give them, and how you really make them understand the value of that 1 or 2 or 3 rules that you have. Next is materials. Okay, so as teachers, we really have a lot of stuff, paraphernalia and decorations. When you come to school like this one, like a preschool classroom, you'd see a lot of these. When you go to my room, you won't see any of that. I mean, I've practiced minimalism with my class. I had a little decoration, but not a lot of them. I only put what's necessary. I only put the reminders, the homework, or the list of the list of officers, the list of cleaners, all that. I don't really put a lot of things in my room. And realizing it now, because of the pandemic, what happened, or what's the value of all of the materials that you have in school? All of the papers that you painstakingly kept in your cabinets because you felt like maybe next year I'll be able to use it with my next class. What happened to these materials that you have in there? Are you able to use it right now because of the pandemic? No. It's just there inside your drawer, inside your cabinet, rotting away, right? When you get back there next school year, when hopefully everything will be over by then, is it something that you would still be able to use? That's why now you have to think about what are the things that are necessary. Do I really have to print out this? Do I really have to come up with all these cartolinas, post them all in my room, fill my room with all of these cartolinas? Does it really make the learning better, or does it distract my students? Do I really need to put all of these plants? Do I really have to put all of these pictures in my room? Does that aid the way that I educate my students? So again, minimalism, only focus on what's necessary. If you only need to put up this one picture, fine. If you only have to put up your rules in the class, fine, do that. But if you feel like it's necessary that your students need all of these decorations, be my guest, do it. What about books? I like reading books, but nowadays I've been listening to audiobooks because I don't have the time to read them anymore. So I listen to audiobooks whenever I'm working, whenever I have to do my modules or I have to do something else, I just listen to audiobooks. I still am able to work and at the same time do something that relaxes me. So from buying books or purchasing actual books, now I am more into audiobooks and to ebooks if I really want to read, to ebooks. And that is again one way of practicing minimalism because now you can save some space in your shelves or some space in your room from your table and just have them all in your tablet or have them all in your phone. Download a lot of books if you want, have them there, and it's very convenient because you don't have to look for it, you don't have to carry it inside your bag, a very thick book inside your bag. You can just read it from your phone or from your tablet, and that's something that I'm considering right now. Well, I've been doing it, but I really want to transition from having physical books to ebooks. But however, for some people, they would still rather have physical books. They like the smell of it, they like the feel of it, they like the feeling of accomplishment whenever they would see that they're already at the half part of the middle part of it or they're almost done with it. It's really not the same when you look at an online or a soft copy of it or an ebook format because you cannot visualize how much or how many pages you're already done with. However, there are pros and there are cons to having ebooks and to having online materials. They're easier to compile, more convenient because again you have them in your phone, you have them in your tablets, and you can carry them anywhere that you want to go. You don't have to print them out, you don't have to spend money on going to the bookstore and buying it. And one thing that I can also suggest to you is looking at the Learn at Home kits from Vibal. So what is this Learn at Home kit? You have seen the video earlier. So this Learn at Home kit consists of an academic book, test booklet, activity sheets, supplements, and teach at home guide. Now this could be downloaded online. So meaning if you would like to teach your students or if you would like for parents who are watching right now, if you would like to teach your kids or your nieces and nephews something or teach help them in their lessons, you can download the Learn at Home kit prepared or made by Vibal. So this is what it looks like. So you have the supplement, the activity sheets, the test booklet, and the academic book. If you look at them, actually inside those books, there are actually 5 subjects already. If I'm not mistaken, 5. So you have the English, the major subjects. You have English, Filipino, math, science, social studies. I think it's all there. So with just one book, you have all of those subjects already, and you don't have to purchase a lot of books or multiple books in one. And what's good about this or what's best about this, it's all online. You can download it. You can put them inside your tablet or in your laptop or in your cell phone if you would like to do that. It's all online. It's very convenient. It's easy and it's free. So how can you download it? You go to this page, choose from the educational materials, teach at home guide, supplement, activity sheets, test booklet, and academic book. Choose which grade, and then you click download, and then that's it. Is minimalism present here? Yes. Again, just like what I said about books, you don't have to buy physical books. You don't have to pile them up in your room, take up space. It's all in your tablet, in your laptop, or in your cell phones. Another thing, what about gadgets? How can I apply minimalism in my gadgets? I have already, I mean, do I have to spend a lot of money on it? It's up to you. If you feel like you have to buy an expensive laptop because it's more functional for you, because it works for you, it's good for the kind of work that you have to do, then go ahead and do that. It's up to you. It's whatever is necessary for you. If you have to buy a laptop and together with that a tablet because they work together, fine, go ahead and do that. But again, sit on it. Decide like 7 days or 2 weeks if you want, and really think about whether you need it or not. And here are again 5 questions from Dr. Tiffany Carr from the Insider's Guide to Becoming a Minimalist Teacher. Now, these questions can be asked whenever you feel like getting something or purchasing something for your class. You ask yourself, does this item serve a purpose? Is there a reason why I have to buy this? Is it is it does it have a purpose? Will it serve me and my students if I buy it? Does it make a positive impact in my classroom? Will my students be happier if they can see this picture in my room? Will they be more energized if they see a skeleton? What do you call that? Uh, I forgot the term. But if you have a skeleton mm, picture or the actual one, I don't know if that's allowed. But will that be able to help my students learn better? Is this item necessary? The third question, the most important, is this item necessary? How would the classroom dynamic change without it? Will my students be less energized because they were not able to see this particular picture? Because I did not put up um this material I have or I wanted to buy, they're not learning what I'm teaching them. Where should this item be located? If it's something that you need, where should you put it? Should you put it in front of your classroom, by your door, in your cabinets, anywhere? As long as it will serve its purpose and it will be impactful for your students. Now, what about PowerPoint presentations? I don't know if you have noticed with my PowerPoint presentations, I tend to make them simple. I don't really like to put a lot of things. I only put the title and then some words if I have to, pictures. I attended a seminar before about how to come up with or how to construct PowerPoints. And since then until now, I really made sure that all of my PowerPoints are very simple. I really don't like putting a lot of transitions, animations. And I remember I had a classmate in college. I'm sorry for mentioning this if you're watching. I have a classmate in college. He gave out a report. I think it was in our EdTech class. And he was asked to report on something. And then in his PowerPoint, he had a lot of GIF or GIF. How do you pronounce it? I don't know. He had a lot of that and a lot of transitions. And my teacher he actually got mad because it's distracting to have all of those transitions, all of those images moving around in your PowerPoint. So since then, I also learned that I have to make my PowerPoint simple, very minimal, but still, what my students have to learn, it's already there. Now, what about submission of schoolwork? How do I ask my students to submit their work? Do I ask them to individually send them? Do I ask them to send them to school now that there's a pandemic, or can I just ask them to submit it using Google Drive? Can I ask them to just give me the link, send me the link? It's easier. You have to come up with efficient system of how you want your students to do their work, how you want them to submit it to you, and how you would like to check all of their work. You have to be systematic and it has to be efficient. And with schedule as well, whenever you're planning something like your module, think about your schedule. Can I really finish this in 4 days? In 3 days, rather? Can I come up with, or can I really make sure that by 3 days, all of these will be accomplished and my students will be able to learn from whatever I'll be putting there? And same with scheduling, not just in the not just with your work, but scheduling your daily activities as well. Because if you try to free up some of your, some of the, maybe like an hour or so from your schedule, you'll be able to spend that hour or two with something that's more necessary. So we have to really learn how to do our scheduling. This is still something I'm really trying to work on. um, I would ask the help of my friends Jelay and Kim to help me with this. Still something I really have to work on, how I schedule my work. So here, before I end, I would like to give you some notes for students and for teachers, this could also be used by parents. For students, you have to build your self discipline by learning and practicing every day. Really care and have passion about what you're learning. Remind yourself why you need it and envision the end game. This way, the motivation will stay with you. Outline and write down. So I have to outline. When I was doing this talk, I had to just outline. I did not really ask myself to, you have to come up with an actual script. I didn't really think of that being very necessary. I can just list down the topics and then discuss as I look at them. Make deliberate associations for very important piece of information. Make it personal memorable. This one, that's why I really like telling or sharing experiences because I would be able to remember that topic well or better. Learn how to efficiently use additional resources like the internet. Teach as teachers, we also and parents, we have to teach our kids or our students to learn how to use the internet, how to be efficient with it. You can search for tips on how to use Google better, how to research or to search using Google. And for teachers, focus on covering fewer topics, but make sure that students get a much deeper understanding. Ditch multiple presentations and visuals. No need to come up with 3 PowerPoints, 5 videos. Prepare more direct instruction. Get students to practice specific knowledge, but try not to be strong-headedly focused on getting the only correct answer. We have to make sure that whenever we are asking our students to answer, we don't tell them, no, that's wrong. We have to make them understand why that's wrong. And we cannot really just set up one correct answer, especially when it's construction of answering an essay question. We have to give room for corrections. Choose fewer activities but cover the most relevant ones in depth. Analyze your students' needs. Again, you have to look at the needs of your students depending on who they are. Don't forget about personal development. Learning never ends, and even the sky is not the limit. In conclusion, I would like you to remember this. Minimalism is all about efficiency, spareness, refinement, and simplicity. Efficiency meaning you have to come up with an efficient way or system of how you do things. Spareness is living with less. Refinement is making sure that you learn all the time. And simplicity is living simply as well. So I guess that's it. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening to my talk. Hopefully, you learned something from my experience with minimalism and how I apply that lifestyle in the way that I teach. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Now we will proceed to the question and answer portion. Our first question is from Anjo Hardin. Are there bad side effects of minimalism?
Okay. Are there bad side effects to minimalism? I guess there could be bad side effects. That's why you really have to make sure that when you're thinking about applying minimalism, is it something that you need in your life? Is it something that's applicable for you? Maybe you cannot practice minimalism because you really have to provide for a lot of people. Can you really say that because I'm practicing minimalism, I will only spend 1,000 on our budget? Can you do that when you're living with 10 people in your house? I guess that's just one very simple example. But what I'm trying to say is minimalism is not for everybody. But if you really try to think about it, read about it, watch videos about it, maybe you'll be able to realize that you could do it if you really want to. Again, it's something that you have to consciously decide on your own and not really have someone force it on you. Thank you very much for that question.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next question is from Sofia Rodriguez. Is it still possible for us to apply minimalism if we lack resources?
Of course, I think minimalism doesn't really require us to have a lot of things in our life and to declutter. But living with less resources, you can already apply it. Again, minimalism is not about having less or maybe having more, but making room for what matters. If you feel like as not having enough resources, if you feel like you don't have you're realizing that this stuff is, even though I don't have it with me, I can still function better, I can still live my life, I can still teach better, and I can still connect with my students, then that's fine. That's minimalism. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. That's all the questions we have for now. Any last reminders to our viewers for today po?
Last reminds. I would just like to thank everybody for watching this, for supporting me in giving this talk. I would like to thank my parents for watching. Hi, Ma. Hi, Tai. My siblings, my friends, Jelai Kim, and all of my Kayla friends. My coworkers, thank you very much for supporting, sharing, and our principal, Sister Pinky, thank you very much.
There we have it. In behalf of Vibal Group Incorporated, I would like to thank our speaker for today for this very eye-opening, insightful, and minimalist learning session. It is an honor to have you with us today, ma'am. And to all our Kavibal viewers, all thanks to you for your continuous patronage to our daily learning session. Don't forget to register to get your e-certificate of participation. We also encourage you to subscribe and watch on our official Viva Facebook and YouTube channel. Muli, maraming salamat at magandang araw sa ating lahat.